Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail's Whitehall editor, Claire Ellicott. Lovely to see both of you.
Good to see you.
As ever, plenty to discuss. So let's take a look straight away at the newspapers, starting with the Metro, the police search in the UK and in China for more possible victims of a student who drugged and raped 10 women and perhaps the paper says up to 60 others. That's their top story in the Metro. News of Donald Trump's latest ramping up of pressure on Ukraine leads the Telegraph with the headline, Trump turns off Ukraine missiles. The Guardian says the US stops sharing intelligence with Kyiv to pile pressure on Zelensky. The Times quotes Ukrainian MP who says America's actions will only cost more lives in the war. The Eye goes with a bigger-than-expected £3 billion cut in the welfare budget to be announced in the Chancellor's spring statement. Claire's paper, the Daily Mail, has been looking into what it calls the fiasco of a two-tiered justice system, which is alleged to favour ethnic minorities. Expectations of a huge increase in German defence spending has raised hopes of an economic boost in the country and pushed up borrowing costs, according to the Financial Times. Kevin's paper, The Mirror, has Prince William's tribute and thanks to the heroes of the NHS on a visit to a hospital in Reading. And with some long-awaited sunshine finally on the horizon, the Star carries a warning from scientists to stay indoors or risk getting a tan. Well, Kevin and Claire are here with us. Should we start with the Metro, Claire? 60 more victims. I think it was 10 in the case that's been heard. Possibly 50 more, but, I mean, you know, who knows? The police don't necessarily know, do they?
Yes, it sounds like they've found a cache of evidence that suggests there have been an awful lot of women. I think other papers are even saying up to 100. It's clear they have no idea how prolific he was, but if indeed he has carried out this many attacks, then you are looking at Britain's most prolific sex offender. And it's an awful case. They've identified a few victims, some of whom gave evidence. He put date rape drugs in those women's drinks, and then he attacked them. He's a PhD student who was living in London. It's just a horrific story, and you know, some of the jurors who sat through that trial are so traumatised by what happened. I think they've been spared jury duty for the next 2 decades. It's an absolutely heinous crime, and he may be one of Britain's worst offenders, and the police are, you know, still going through all the evidence that they've found, and there may be so many more women.
And he's been a student for a while, I think since 2017, you know, 1 degree, moving on to a PhD. Yeah. People would be looking and saying, why doesn't he just get deported?
I know.
He's been found guilty.
Yeah, he's 28. He's been in the UK for 10 years, initially Northern Ireland, then in London. They may attempt to do a deal. He hasn't been sentenced yet. We don't know quite how long the sentence is. It's going to be pretty hefty. Now, if he's committed these crimes in China, perhaps the Chinese want him after he's finished his term here. I'm sure he'll certainly be deported because he can't say he's got a family life here at that age to make an argument to stay. If he goes to China, I suspect he'd get another sentence. But perhaps there will be negotiations to go to China. Although, would he get the death penalty in China? If he would, then we don't deport. People might say, well, he should have thought that before he started raping these people, but we don't deport where there's the death penalty. But that figure of 60, I think that's incorrect, because the police were briefing 50. Yeah. I think the Metro, which goes to press very, very early, has added the 10 convictions to the suspected 50, although the Guardian goes for rape 100 women. But the police were briefing perhaps another 50, and so more people could come forward. He could yet find himself back on trial for fresh cases.
Yeah, and a very distressing job for police to sit through hours of footage trying to identify these people who have not been identified, and that's the really difficult part of this.
We often discuss where the police get it wrong, but it seems this has been a kind of very thorough investigation. There was an initial complaint, but then the woman withdrew it. Then the second woman came forward, and they seem to have pursued it and got over language barriers of having to get translations of 1,270 videos and 9 million messages, which is they had a bot to actually translate them for them. There's so many. I mean, I think the police have been very good here.
Very interesting. OK, well, no doubt we'll hear more because there's more to come in that. In the meantime, let's talk about Ukraine, the US, Europe. The Guardian, first of all, US stops sharing intelligence with Kyiv. And then the Daily Telegraph points out that that means it effectively turns off Ukraine's most powerful missiles, left frozen, as the paper puts it. I mean, this is... I mean, how would you describe what this is then now by America?
Well, this is the latest development in this incredibly sad saga where you're seeing Trump force Ukraine to the negotiating table, and it's never going to be in Ukraine's interest. And the latest attempt to kind of put the pressure on is turning off the intelligence sharing. And this doesn't just mean that Ukraine can't attack Russia. It means Ukraine can't defend itself, and it won't be able to see incoming attacks from Russia and defend its people and its civilian population. And the only outcome of this can be that Russia is emboldened yet again to continue attacking Ukraine and do as much as it can while this peace process that Trump is allegedly trying to bring about continues. But it's so hard, I think, for us in Britain, who are so supportive of Ukraine, and across Europe, to watch this happening because, there have been so many lies about what happened, and Trump has taken such a hard line against Zelensky, which I think none of us really understand.
Well, there's been an attack tonight, a missile strike by Russia. I think the latest I saw was 1 dead, 3 injured, an apartment building. And that is the accusation. You've left civilians open to be killed. And, if you look at the Telegraph, turned off the most powerful weapons. People pointing out, how will America sell these weapons to other countries in the future if they could suddenly pull the plug on a whim of foreign policy, effectively?
Yeah.
I mean, it damages their own defence industry, does it not?
The Telegraph have a Ukrainian defence source describing it as blackmail.
Yeah.
To force.
It's gun to the head leverage now, isn't it?
And if you look at the picture on the front of the Guardian, which is Trump punching his right fist after addressing both houses of Congress, you could stick in that hand a white flag that he wants Ukraine to wave, or you could put a fanboy poster of Putin in, because it's almost as if the US has switched sides and is now on Putin's side, not on Zelensky and Ukraine's side, from Trump ignorantly or mendaciously saying Zelensky was the dictator, not using that label on the actual dictator Putin, or blaming Ukraine for the invasion when they are the victim of the invasion. And he just seems now utterly determined to humiliate Zelensky, have him replaced eventually, and get him to beg. Yeah. And the problem, you're told a bully, stay away from a bully or fight back, but he can't because the bully has basically got the weapon supplies in his grip. I mean, the only hope is, the volte-face that happens quite quickly under the Trump administration. For example, under tariffs, chatting to automakers, as they call it, tonight, giving them a month's grace. I'm just seeing, actually, that NBC News is reporting that the Trump administration is rethinking their Guantanamo immigrant detention plan, which was another much-lauded policy that came in. So these things are paused. They can come and go. But, the effort to drive Zelensky to the table it's a tough call, isn't it? This one, it's been toughly handled.
Of course, and humiliating him in that White House exchange when J.D. Vance and Trump just roundly humiliated him, and then forcing him to apologise, and it was just painful to watch. And we know Zelensky is such a proud man who's led his nation throughout this conflict, and actually has attracted respect from around the world for how he's handled these negotiations. It's just awful to watch it happen, and him having to go and bend a knee to Trump.
Well, the Times as well, more people will die after US cuts, as you quoted there, but also saying that Mike Waltz, the US National Security Advisor, said that President Trump was prepared to consider lifting the suspension of military aid to Ukraine if negotiations progressed.
There will be tensions in the Trump cabinet and government, and people will be viewing these things rather differently. And I suspect the military professionals who will report to the Defence Secretary and the National Security Advisor will be saying, look, this is utterly bonkers. Yeah. Even if you want Ukraine to negotiate, well, Ukraine wants to negotiate, but it seems Trump wants to surrender and then pillage the natural resources. Yeah. But if you weaken Ukraine in any negotiations, you strengthen the hand of Putin. It's kind of crazy, but we are dealing with an unhinged president. Yeah. That's it. Who's nasty and vile with it, as is J.D. Vance.
Yes, well, the newspapers
we saw the dig yesterday. I mean, it was just horrible.
In the meantime, I mentioned tariffs. It's an interesting economic picture. In the meantime, the idea of cuts to the welfare budget, which we've always thought would come about now, didn't we? We're now finding reasons why they're coming. So what's the latest that you're hearing then in terms of what would be trimmed?
So we're 3 weeks away from Rachel Reeves' spring statement, and she's going to have to propose some sort of cuts to government spending because she did have some headroom. It's been eroded by about 10 billion of headroom. It's been eroded by the cost of borrowing going up, and she's going to have to find a lot of money. And all governments turn to the rather large welfare bill and come up with novel ways of trying to get it down. One of the ways I think they're going to try to get it down is by presenting the OBR, which is the fiscal watchdog, with proposals to try to get people back into work and to get the OBR to measure this financially and to sort of trim their outlook so that she's not spending as much. But obviously that's incredibly difficult. How on earth are the OBR going to
I thought Mel Stride took a whole 2 years doing that, didn't he? But anyway,
I see how difficult it is. Even if you have a goal to cut, it's very difficult to implement, and you cannot predict how many people are going to claim benefits. Now, there has been a spike in people suddenly being sick and getting benefits. Now, you've got to address that. If you can make them unsick or class them as unsick.
And they get paid more on sickness benefit than on benefits where you have to seek work.
You could see that does need addressing in some way, but it's far easier to come out with these big figures and say you're going to do it than actually achieve it.
And actually, Mel Stride did have some probably quite good proposals, and Labour have adopted them, it seems. And they will bear fruit, possibly, but over the long term. And I think that's really difficult to take money off that she needs to find right now to increase defence spending on all the rest of it.
Or time to change the fiscal rules, I think.
And if people are sick, if people are sick and they are disabled, do you really want to? Do you want to penalise them? And there are so many people in work on low wages who rely on universal credit at the top of their wages. Do you really want to hurt them? I would hope not.
I think we'll watch this space for the next couple of weeks, won't we, on that one? Lots more stuff to come. The front page of The Telegraph as well. It says that when you go to the doctor, you are more likely to be seen by a woman. Back in just a moment.
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Trust in politics is at an all-time low. What's going wrong and can we fix it? It's from Liz. She wants to know, why is there still no sign of the Labour Party electing a woman as leader?
It's sort of embarrassing. It takes a very strong man to be leader, but it takes an even stronger man to support a woman for leader.
If you want to be mean to politicians, crack on. The activists that go out and make elections happen, I kind of feel just don't be horrible to them. Be polite to them in the same way that they're polite to you.
Keir Starmer has got us into government with a big majority. He was completely clear before the election that he wasn't going to be able to do the two-child benefit policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't an early thing that comes along.
I went up to Gordon Brown and said, hello? No, yes, where is it? I said, found all these Tory candidates breaking land. Let me see it. This is brilliant.
You are on Sky News. Welcome to the BAFTAs.
I'm Katie Spencer, Sky's arts and entertainment correspondent, and from the BAFTAs to the Brit Awards, the Oscars to the Olivier's, our entertainment team is here interviewing some of the biggest stars in the world.
This is the story of the night. It's the little independent film that could.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Up and scoop of the year. And then...
Well, welcome back. I just want to take a short moment to talk about us here at Sky News because we have just been voted News Channel of the Year for the 8th consecutive year of the Royal Television Society Award ceremony. Claire was cheering for my behalf. Here's a look then at the work that helped win that honour.
Here we go.
2, 1.
To Sophie.
The big announcement.
The battle for number 10.
The drone is above us.
It is a chaotic scene.
They've asked us to leave.
It is a clear Labour landslide.
The car is covered in.
Liberated but left in ruins.
A major incident has been declared.
That's when misinformation floods the zone.
It became clear the media weren't welcome.
These extraordinary images.
Must have taken years.
Who wants to talk about politics?
OK, stand by.
I wouldn't be asking it if I didn't think it was a relevant question.
The winner of the 2024 presidential election.
Quite extraordinary events.
Always reminds you what a busy year it was, doesn't it, when you look back at that? Anyway, I'm very proud of everybody here. So much hard work has to be going into 24-hour rolling news, live telly all the time,
As a viewer, I know why you win, and I flick through all the channels you can get in the news channels in the UK. I should probably be watching sport or something rather than going the news, but I'm watching the news.
We only watch Sky.
You're head and shoulders above.
And that's when they keep being invited back. Exactly that. Right, what are we doing next then? Two-tier justice fiasco. Let's go to your paper then, Claire.
Yes, so this is a really interesting story. So the Sentencing Council, which is independent of government, has decided to start deciding jail sentences based on people's characteristics, so whether they're ethnic minorities, whether they're from a different religion or a gender, and taking that into account when they sentence. This has now been brought to the attention of the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who is not happy about it, but certain people, Robert Jimrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, are pointing out that some of her representatives were in the room when this was all decided. So it's a big row that will rumble on, but it's clearly quite a seismic thing to do, to take into account someone's background when you're deciding how to punish them for a crime they've committed. But
it's been going on for some time. You have the pre-sentencing reports, which you get from probation. The sentencing... I'm almost certain I have read this in the past. They also look at your class, your economic positions, whether you've been abused, whether you're male or you're female, your ethnic background. And I know the Sentencing Council in the Bar Association and others have been concerned that actually people from ethnic minority backgrounds, people of colour, are more likely to be, 1, stopped by the police, 2, prosecuted, 3, jailed, and 4, given a longer jail sentence. And they're trying to address that. But also it covers faith as well. If you're a religious group or a cultural group, not rather than your heritage. I think Robert Jenrick, who's kicked off about this, will find that it's been going on when he was in government.
Well, I think these are new guidelines, but what they sort of feed into is this idea that there is a real problem in the justice system. They have too many people in prison, too many people are going to prison. We can't keep doing that. And you're going to have to find ways to either have fewer people in prison or lessen their sentences.
Just under a minute left. Daily Telegraph. When you go to the doctor, you're more likely to be seen by a woman. More female doctors than male for the first time.
Yeah.
All I'd point out is it says 50.04% of doctors are now female. But I mean, women are more than 50% of the population, so it's about right.
Yeah, I know. It's actually where it should be. But given there were no women doctors, or virtually no women doctors at the beginning of the last century, it's come forward. Although it does point out that women seem to be in paediatrics and GPs, fewer in surgery, as there's some imbalance in the higher earning positions, so there's a pay gap, but yeah, you would have thought George Clooney, eat your heart out now, mate. You're not representing Dr. Finley. If you're old enough to remember that, you probably won't be. Yeah,
it's like another woo.
Sorry.
Both of you, thank you very much, Jean. Kevin, Claire, thank you. See you for more in the 11, of course. Let's take a look at the weather now, shall we?
A bright start and always a warm welcome. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
So it will be unsettled to end the week, but much milder, with 17 degrees Celsius possible in some eastern parts by the weekend. Before then, there'll be a mostly fine and largely fog and frost-free start tomorrow. Northern Scotland, though, will see some rain, windy in the north and the west again. Southern Britain will see any fog lifting by mid-morning. Northern Scotland will see rain largely clearing to Shetland. Most places will then be sunny into the afternoon. Ireland, Northern Ireland, expect a fair amount of cloud. It'll be quite warm, but windy.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
So coming up next on Sky News at 11, police believe a Chinese PhD student found guilty today of drugging and raping 10 women in London and China could have raped more than 50 others.